Hey everybody, Darktide. Is it good? That's this video. We're just gonna be talking about Darktide 2. Except instead of is Darktide 2 good now? Or sorry, is Darktide good now? Have they made it good now? Is it worth playing now? Instead of any of that, it's just gonna be me rambling about Darktide for a very long time, for however long this video is. If you go and you look at however long this video is, that's gonna be rambling about this. I'll edit in some footage and you can listen to that. Otherwise, you're just gonna be listening to me ramble about Darktide. So, okay. When Darktide first came out, it was in its beta, and I reviewed its beta on this channel. It was one of the first reviews I did. My reviews have not gotten better. They've always been terrible. So, you know, thank you for continuing to watch. At any rate, when I reviewed it, I said, I don't really know what's going on with this game. There doesn't really seem to be a late game. There doesn't really seem to be any progression. There doesn't really seem to be anything to do. There was only one boss in the beta, and I didn't understand, like, what was the purposes? Once you reached max level and you had a good weapon, like, what was the purpose? What do you do then? And everyone said, well, they're going to add multi-classing, they're going to add loot progression, they're going to add higher difficulties, they're going to add all this stuff. And I thought to myself, that's weird. It's weird that they would choose to open beta the game a month before it came out and not have any of this stuff that supposedly was going to be in the game and added. And just for the record, the multi-classing never got in the game. They said they were going to have it, they never had it. The whole loot progression, any of that stuff, that I think it's being worked on in like the next patch, but I played it now. It was a month and a half since the game launched. It was another large update. I said, okay, let me come back and try it. And well, no, I mean, there's nothing. Particularly, here's one thing I did notice. Darktide 2, why do I keep calling it Darktide 2? Because there was Vermintide 2. It was the sequel of Vermintide 2. Would you call it the sequel of Vermintide 2? Anyway, Darktide, was okay, let me restart here. Back when Darktide was in its open beta, I noticed that they did two open betas, right? And back to back, one after the other, I noticed that they added core features to the game after the first open beta. To me, some people looked at that and they said, man, they're really working on this game really hard. They're adding things so quickly. They must be holding it back from us and showing it to us only, you know, blah, 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 right? But that wasn't true. Obviously, they weren't holding back on the open beta or anything like that. They were never holding back. Why would anyone make their open beta look worse by withholding core features of the game? No. What was happening when Darktide 2 was in open beta, from the open beta to its launch, they were adding things to the game at rapid pace, hoping to get it in before the game launched. And they got some things in before the game launched, but they didn't really get a whole lot in the game. What I'm trying to say here is Darktide 2 launched as a minimum viable product. The absolute lowest of the low that it would take a game to be viable to actually look like it was still worth money. That's how the game launched. They were cranking out, they were probably crunching 12 to 16 hour shifts, putting in every little feature that they could maybe hope to get into the game before it launched. And it still did not launch with a lot, as seen by its reviews, as seen with its player count and all that stuff. You can look at its player count dwindling. You can look at all that stuff. It does maintain a good, healthy player base. I don't want this to be all negative. They have added a lot of things to do. There do seem to be some people who enjoy the game, but I will never forgive myself, because when I originally, and this is me going back to when I was going over this entire topic, right? When I was first reviewing Darktide, I thought to myself, this really looks like a minimum viable product. All the telltale signs were there. The fact that everyone thought they were withholding key features, the fact that it really didn't look that good, the fact that like so much of the UI was placeholder, it really felt to me that they were launching a minimum viable product. And because they had cool guns and they had cool shooting and they had big boom booms and you could melee enemies and chop them with a chainsword, right? It looked like because that element was cool, that someone at the higher up, some executive, some developer, some producer had gone ahead and told them, just launch the game. It looks good. It'll look good. People will buy it. It looks good. Just go ahead and launch the game, right? And that's what it looked like what was happening, right? And sure enough, that is 100% what happened. So fast forward to now. Okay, I just wanted to say all that because I kind of wanted to get that off my chest. That has nothing to do with this video. I just wanted to get it off my chest that, like, I feel like that was always one of my biggest regrets, is I didn't, like, hammer this game back in open beta. Like, when I originally did my review, I should have talked about that way more. And it's always just been a regret of mine that I kind of bought into the hype even slightly. Like I was hesitant. I was like, I don't know, guys, something's sketchy about this. But I didn't like voice my concerns more like, hey guys, there might be a very large issue here. And that's why since then I've been a bit more vocal with my concerns on games. Because look, my gut feeling 90% of the time is correct. Because look, I play so many games, I just get a gut feeling. And most of the time it's going to be correct. Because, you know, let's be honest, producers, they tend to act very similarly. Does this game look cool? Launch it. Doesn't matter. Just launch it. Put out an apology letter later. Say you're going to fix the game. In 2 years, make a comeback tour and say, look, guys, look how hard we worked. And people will go, oh my God, they work so hard on the game. They really care about us. Meanwhile, the game's been, you know, selling cosmetics this entire time. So anyway, Darktide 2. Why do I keep calling it Darktide 2? Because there was Vermintide 2 and there was Darktide. Does anyone else do that? Is it just a me thing? I gotta be crazy. Anyway, Darktide. Has it gotten better? Is it good now? Well, look, at the end of the day, I decided to play Darktide again because it had a big update. And I said, screw it, let me just go play it again. So I played it again. And I realized I'd never really gotten my money's worth out of the game. I played a lot of the melee classes. And when I first went back into the game, I played a lot more melee classes. I did. And I enjoyed the melee. The weapon balance is a little bit better. I'm going to say it's a little bit better. More weapons are viable. I wouldn't say all of them, but more weapons are viable than ever before. Some of them are still quite lame. You got like a Walmart hatchet is one of your weapons. Just like a hatchet, looks like you bought it from Walmart. This time I'm going to kill the demon of Nurgle with an axe of that size. Like a chop chop. Not like a giant chainsword, not like an eviscerator, not a thunder hammer, not a giant club even, not even like a 2x4. No, I mean just a hatchet. That like a 1 foot long hatchet, just chop chop like that. Yeah, that'll destroy a greater demon in Nurgle. Yeah, no problem. And like half the melee weapons are like that, by the way, which is just deplorable to me. So oh boy. But anyway, I tried a bunch of the new melee weapons they'd added since the game originally released, and I was enjoying a lot of them. It felt like most of them at least had something to them, right? I found one that I was actually really enjoying. And I was just kind of having fun with the game. I was kind of getting into it, playing on the higher difficulties. And I decided, look, I'd never really got my money's worth out of this game. So I swapped over to the veteran, the range class, and I tried all the different range weapons in the game. And let me tell you, I think this game plays a lot better as a range class than as a melee class. The range weapons are all very different from each other. Their balance is significantly better than it was at launch. On launch, the weapon balance in this game was not very good. There was only a couple, I'm going to say, good ranged weapons. Now, look, if you're coming from my Helldivers 2 video and you're going, yeah, oh, if there's an overpowered weapon, that's the only one you use. It wasn't so much that, like, only the overpowered weapons were viable, I would say. I don't think that I don't think that only having the overpowered weapons being viable is true, right? But I would say that the bad weapons were quite bad. I'm sorry for phrasing this in like a very weird yet obvious way, but it kind of comes down to the fact that, like, on launch, many of the bad weapons were really bad because they just couldn't maintain ammo capacity, or they just really didn't do any damage. It just kind of felt like they hadn't really tried. I guess that's the best way to put it. It felt like they kind of hadn't tried. The good weapons were really good, and the bad weapons just, it felt like no one had just played a couple matches on them, because like you couldn't even keep enough ammo if you're actually using it. Even if you're trying to melee to conserve ammo, like you just couldn't use. And anyway, they eventually, what I'm trying to say here is they fixed up all these ranged weapons, and they eventually did a lot to improve it. And I played through with a bunch of the different range weapons. I played with the bolter, I played with the shotgun, I played with the plasma rifle, I played with one of the just general assault rifles, shooting bullets and stuff, and I actually enjoyed them. They played pretty differently from each other, and I enjoyed it. It was a very fun time. I still kind of overall enjoy being melee, because chop chop with a giant chain sword. They don't have giant chain axes. They have a one-handed chain axe, but not like a giga chain axe. I don't know why this game is so hesitant to just give people two-handed weapons, right? Like why do the designers think, if I'm in the Warhammer 40k universe and I'm fighting demons and shit, like why do they think I want to carry around the Walmart axe? I will never get over this. How did they think me carrying around a 1 foot tall hatchet, chop chop. How did they really think that that was going to be fun for me? It was obviously not going to be fun for me. Who uses this stupid little hatchet? Unless you think it's like a legitimately good weapon and you're like, oh, I'm going to use it because it's really good and I can move quick while holding it. Like, you only use it because you think it's a good weapon. Ain't nobody busting out the hatchet when you can carry a giant two-handed maul, a two-handed chain axe, a two-handed thunder hammer. Ain't nobody taking out this stupid little hatchet, okay? Nobody's doing that. So I'm sorry. I just can't get over that. I'm gonna be 50 years old. I'm gonna be 70 years old. I'm still gonna be in my retirement home. I'm still gonna be sitting there going over this stupid thing. My son will be sitting there. Papa, what are your last words? I'll be, why a 1 foot tall hatchet? How did they think that was cool enough for 40K? That's my last words right there. I have no idea where I was going with any of this. So, okay. The new weapons are hit and miss, I would say. A lot of the new melee weapons are cool, but at the end of the day, you know, you're swinging a melee weapon. There's only so many ways you can swing a melee weapon. With range, you can make range different. But with melee, you know, obviously at the end of the day, unless they give you special abilities or things like that, there's just not that much they can do. And let me tell you, it's not like they really added many more special abilities to melee weapons or anything to really differentiate them or make them interesting. They really didn't. Not that they really added anything interesting to range weapons either. Now, they did add a double barrel shotgun to the Zealot. Well, I mean, I think they added it to anyone, but it really synergizes with the Zealot because you can, bam, blow out both barrels and then go into chopping people in melee, load it up, bam, go back into melee, right? Like, you can do that between kind of meleeing people. It works really well. It really synergizes with the class, and I actually had a lot of fun with it. So, I guess what I'm saying is they did add some range weapons that are good. But what did they add overall? Let's step back here from me kind of rambling on about a bunch of different topics here. Okay, what did they add overall to this game since launch? Okay, since launch, they have added the ability to kind of remake your weapons a little bit. I won't be spending that much time on this topic because they are, I think, like a couple months from now, maybe 4 months from now, 3 months from now, I don't know. They're going to totally rework itemization entirely. So they kind of reworked itemization and now they're reworking it again. But actually, you know what? Let's not even talk about what's new. Let's talk about how that's a problem. Okay, this is actually a huge issue with games like Darktide. The problem is when you launch games like this too early, you have to constantly be reworking features in the game. When you haven't launched a game, you can fine-tune a feature, throw it out, fine-tune it again, throw it out, fine-tune it again, right? You can constantly be reworking a feature because you don't have a bunch of people on a live service game relying on that feature working and being in the game. Once a game is launched, you can't throw out the itemization system. If they do a big rework and the itemization system is in the game, and after, you know, maybe a play test of a week or so, they go, ugh, I don't really like that. You know, they can't really throw that out, can they? Because now everybody's relying on that being in the game. Now everybody, you can't just chuck that out and introduce a new system, right? You can't just have some placeholder UIs just testing it out or anything. No, that was your official launch. So they've totally reworked the itemization progression system. They've added new ways to retrofit your items with different stats, to upgrade them to higher tier rarities and stuff like that. And now they're just going to throw it out a couple months from now again. So that is seriously a problem with games like Darktide. I saw them, they were reworking crosshairs. Imagine how much time they would have saved if instead of launching the game nearly 2 years ago, imagine they just waited a year, kind of reworked a bunch of concepts, added a bunch of new enemies, added a bunch of stuff. Imagine they actually went through the game and did some stuff and made things better, but they don't. Because they're constantly just reworking things like crosshair. Is this crosshair good? No. Okay, let's try this one. Is this one good? No. Okay, let's try this one. And they're spending time reworking crosshairs, and they're spending time reworking itemization. And why am I saying all this? Am I just rambling incoherently? No, of course not. Because the problem is, and this is the overarching issue with the entire game right now, they haven't added anything to the game. I mean, like, fundamentally, nothing's been added. They haven't really added any new enemies. All their enemies in the game right now are the ones that were in there at launch. They added like a different kind of like flamethrower, I think, something like that. They haven't added any more bosses. There's a unique boss you can do only if you do their unique map, which you queue up for. So you do their unique map, you beat them, and then you go, cool. Maybe you do it a second time and you beat them a second time and you go, cool. But then you're just going to go queue the normal maps and you'll never see the unique boss again. He's not in the normal maps. It's a duo, by the way. So I should say they aren't in the normal map. You'll never see them again. So you just go beat them, and that's it. That's the only new boss they've added. I think they added the demon host, who adds very little to the game. I think they added the greater... I think they added one of the big, like, mini boss enemies that spawn mid-game. You'll probably see us killing a couple of them. That's when, like, the health bar shows up and you kill them. Look, there is so much damage in this game right now. Those dudes just drop like flies. It really doesn't matter. Like, when you're new to the game and you don't really have good weapons or anything like that, they're kind of tanky. But when you get in, once you and your squad are even halfway decent at the game, you kind of just drop them very easily. So the fact that they added some mini bosses, like Left 4 Dead 2, this is not. You are not going to be in a long skirmish, a fight with this large enemy. You're not going to be avoiding abilities and doing that. You're pretty much just going to be running up and beating the crap out of them for a little bit until they die in maybe 10, 20 seconds, right? So the fact that they added, I think they added one or two of those, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything. They haven't, enemy variety is still the same. You're still fighting Nurgle. That's it. That's all you got. All you got is fighting Nurgle. You're going to queue up for one game, fight Nurgle. You're going to queue up for another game, fight Nurgle. Even Helldivers 2 is 2 factions. And here's the thing, even amongst those 2 factions, it will swap in and out some different enemies. Sometimes you'll get the bugs that fly. Sometimes you'll get the bugs that sneak up on you and spit acid. In Darktide, you only get the same enemies. Now, sure, you do have the... more like, I'm gonna call it the raggedy people. They wear rags and they kind of look poor. You have that kind of team, and then you have like the actual like armored people, but the difference between them is there's not, they share all the same unit types, and many of the times they're just on the same map with each other anyway. So like, you're just fighting Nurgle. That's it. It's the same enemies. You're gonna fight a Rager. Oh, but this time it's a different Rager. Yeah, but it's still a Rager. That's it. If you fight any of the Ogrins, it's always going to be an Ogrin, right? So you might find an armored Ogrin. Great, it's kind of new, but like at the end of the day, an armored Ogrin's an armored Ogrin, an unarmored Ogrin's an unarmored Ogrin. Oh, you're going to fight the Reaper, the one with the minigun? Great, but it's always going to be a Reaper. It's always going to be an Ogrin with a minigun, right? And there's a bunch of different special enemies, but they die pretty quickly. They don't really do anything. It's not really that exciting to fight them. So... is the game fun? Oh yeah, no, I think the game's very fun, actually. I did actually enjoy my time playing with the game. I played for about, I think I played for like 10 hours straight, and it was actually a lot of fun to play through the game. I was actually enjoying my time a lot. Would I go back and play it again? No, probably not. It was definitely one of those games that I was having a lot of fun. I was very much enjoying playing the game. But you could kind of feel it. You ever feel this? Anyone ever have this feeling that when you're playing a game, you're actually having a good time, but you know in the back of your mind, once you stop playing, you're never picking this up again, right? You guys ever have a game like that where you're like, oh, I'm really enjoying my time, but I'm probably never picking this thing up again? And that was me and Darktide, because it was just like, okay, there's no new enemies. There's very few new maps. There was one new map, and I did kind of enjoy it, but at the end of the day, I kind of zoned out again, because it's just like, you're just doing the same thing. It's a new map texture. You know, there's new things there, but you're fighting the same enemies again and again and again. Now, like, I don't know how Left 4 Dead 2 does it. Someone ought to do a case study on this. Like, I swear to you, someone do a deep dive study on how so many people to this day continue to play Left 4 Dead 2. Is it the workshop? Is it new maps? Is that it? Is it just maps and stuff? Because like, how did Left 4 Dead 2 manage to maintain so many people playing the same maps with the same limited amount of guns? How did that happen for so long, even before the workshop, right? And then you got games like Darktide, where you played for maybe 20 hours and you think, well, I've kind of seen about everything. I'm bored of this, right? Like, how did they do it? How did Darktide like not manage to make things interesting, but Left 4 Dead does? And I think if I had to guess, I feel like one of the things Darktide does poorly that Left 4 Dead does well, Darktide feels very much like you're going to beat the map and you're just going to bulldoze through everything. But at the end of the day, you're just spamming dodge, 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 dodge. That's all you're doing. You're just spamming dodge, dodge, dodge while you're AoEing down huge packs of enemies, and that's all you're doing. The special enemies rarely put up a fight or do anything interesting. Now, some of them can be threatening and can hurt you, but most of them die so quickly that they'll never actually threaten you. In Left 4 Dead 2, some of the specials can kind of get the jump on you and really actually hurt you. And they can in Darktide too, but it doesn't feel like it. I don't know a better way to put it. It just, like, sometimes, every so often, you get threatened and you're like, oh. But, like, the amount of times we've ever actually wiped or had a death or had bad things happen is so rare. Like, sometimes I die because I'm being silly, because I'm just running up because it's fun, right? It's fun to run up and hit things with a giant chainsword. I've died a few times doing that, no doubt. But, you know, it's not the same feeling as Left 4 Dead, especially on the higher difficulties Left 4 Dead. I don't know. So again, someone will have to do a case study. There's got to be like some YouTuber, someone do something. Do put out like a 3-hour video for me. This is what I want from you. I want you to put out a 3-hour video on all the differences, how Left 4 Dead managed to maintain such a good player base. And then you got games like Helldivers. You got games like Darktide that just, like, their player base just bleeds out because people just don't enjoy the game. Eventually they just get bored of it. Like, how is it? Is it literally just the workshop, or was there some magic? Is it nostalgia? Is that it? Is it just nostalgia? I mean, it did kind of fit into that point in time where maybe it's just perfect nostalgia. I don't know, but like, it's a lot. Like 40,000 concurrent players daily is like a lot of nostalgia, right? Like, I don't think Diablo 2 is reaching that much nostalgia. So there's got to be some sweet sauce here. There's got to be some magic to this, right? Maybe. I don't know. Darktide 2, is it worth playing again? Look, if you haven't played through the game in a while and you haven't, like, because they did add a talent system. The talents are actually, like, I'll give them credit. The talents are pretty cool. You can kind of do unique builds. The weapons, upgrading your weapon is kind of cool. Now, once you figure out how to make weapons, I'm going to give you a hint. You buy gray weapons until one rolls up a good high damage stat. Look at your damage stat, by the way. If you're level 30, it can roll up to 80%. Pay attention to your damage stat, okay? And pay attention to your overall rolls, because you roll, for example, good damage, good penetration, like I did. I just rolled until I got him. I got really lucky, mind you. I got pretty dang lucky. But that's basically all you need to do. Just pay attention to the damage stat and rolls. If you get a gray, white or whatever with good rolls, and start upgrading that one with your mission stuff. That's generally what you do, right? Just keep rolling, use your money to roll them up. And then be like, oh, that's a good one. Then you upgrade it. And look, if this sounds exciting to you, if upgrading and curating weapons sounds exciting to you and doing that, like, go do it. Like, honestly, you bought the game. If you did buy the game, you bought the game, $40. Go install it. It's 120 gigs for some reason. But yeah, sure, go install it. I'm not sure why it's 120 gigs, but you know, go try it. Go try the talent system. Play it for a bit. You'll probably get, honestly, like I did, you might get 10, even 20 hours if you want to, like, upgrade, do the highest difficulties, beat the game, right? You'll still reach the point where, like, once you find a difficulty that, like, it's kind of, like, uncomfortable to play on it because it's a little bit too hard for you, you'll probably find the point where you don't really want to play there. I could probably beat the highest difficulty. It just sort of required a bit more attention than I wanted to give to the game. Like, I'm not saying that in, like, a negative way. It's just, you know, every so often you'll play a game and you're like, oh, you know, I think it's more fun to play this game on the lower difficulties. That's kind of me in Darktide. Like, I like playing on the high difficulty, but not like the super high, right? Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of giving me my rating for the game. How long have I been ranting for? How long have I been raving for? This is going to be a whole thing, right? I would say that's generally how I'm going to say it. Look, if you bought the game, go try it out, right? Maybe try it again when the itemization rework comes out in 4 months. But I would say there's, like, enough new maps. There's probably enough new weapons that can interest you, but it won't interest you for long. And that's kind of Darktide in a bit. It maintains a decent player base, probably a rotating player base of people going in, going out, going in, going out, right? You know, probably somewhere around there. And it's a bit of a disappointment then, isn't it? Because a lot of people had high hopes for Darktide. But at the end of the day, you upgrade your melee weapon, you upgrade your range weapon, and then you got 3 trinkets, and that's it. Your armor is completely cosmetic. Your 3 trinkets, you can probably have best in slot pretty quickly. It's not that hard, right? Your weapons, I mean, I high rolled some weapons early on, and then they're just kind of best in slot 2, right? So it's like, if you high roll, if you get lucky early on, you just do best. And this isn't like a Diablo kind of thing where, aha, you high rolled the best weapon. Like there's not that much to high rolling, right? If I had to wager, I'd say maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 will probably roll pretty decently at the very least, where it's good enough to be a high roll. And that's kind of the game. There's just not that much more to it. The higher difficulties just add. Now, I will give them this. The higher difficulties do not just spam you with giga health enemies. Cough, Warframe, cough. It does actually just start sending lots of hordes into you. So like once you start playing on like the giga high difficulties, you are starting to fight swarms of enemies, right? So now you're kind of like min-max build with your talents and your weapons and stuff like that. Like now you can start using that and just, destroying swarms of enemies, even the specials you can start blowing through, and that can be pretty fun. And I'm not knocking it, right? Like again, I played it for 10 hours straight. I was enjoying my time with it. I'm just frustrated. I think that's the best way to put how people feel about Darktide. I think people are frustrated that Darktide did not end up being a better game. I think that's honestly the best way to end this video. There's still really not that many items. There's really not that many ways to progress yourself. There's not that many maps. The enemy types are all the same. The differences between levels aren't really that much either. Ooh, one level rolled, it was really dark. Ooh, it's dark. Ooh, right? Like, okay, who cares, right? I mean, it's kind of annoying when it's dark, but it's like, that's it. Like, that's the biggest difference I noticed. And I played for a while. I tried a lot of different things, right? And they just, it's a fun game. You can see probably through the footage I'll show here. It's a fun game. It's a cool game. You feel badass. If there's one thing they got going for it, you feel badass. But it still just feels like a game where is that it? That's how you get to the end of the game. You're like, is that it? Yeah, I guess that's it. And I think at a certain point, you feel more disappointed than you do annoyed. Like, oh man, they couldn't have done more by now. Oh man. It's like you're enjoying your time. Right, and you got to the end of the smoothie. You got to the end of your milkshake, right? And you're done, and that's it. And like, dang, I was enjoying that. Couldn't have given me something bigger? Okay, that's it. That's me in this one. It's like, oh, wow, shoot, they still didn't add anything, huh? Oh well, maybe next time we come back to Darktide, they'll add more enemy types, they'll add a second faction, they'll somehow diversify things up, they'll add more map differences, maybe they'll add maps that kind of change things around a bit more, maybe they'll add different mid-game objectives and things like that. I don't know, maybe they'll do something, but for now, they kind of just didn't, and that's it. You kind of just have to accept it. Maybe this is all Darktide will ever be, because I'm gonna be real with you, it's been a year and a half and they haven't added anything. At this point, it probably is true that they took their staff off the game. Unless there's some big secret update happening and I'm a total fool and you guys are about to come back to this video 6 months from now and point at me and be, ha ha ha, you dumbass. Sure, maybe if that happens. But the thing is, then I would be happy because I enjoy the game. I just don't find there's that much to do in the game. I played it for 10 hours and I tried a bunch of different weapons and I was like, okay, that's it then. That's Darktide. That's it then. Oh well, maybe next time. Thank you all for listening to my long rambling rant on Darktide. If anyone actually made it this far, I'd be shocked because this is me. I literally have just been up for like 20 hours at this point, maybe more, probably more. And I just had a lot of caffeine, so I'm kind of insomniac over here. And I just decided to finally record this video because I was trying to record a video on Darktide for so long, but like it's kind of like not that interesting to talk about Darktide. Like how many times can I say, yeah, it hasn't really changed, hasn't really gotten better? How many times can I say that for a long time? Now look, if you get Darktide on sale or if you just enjoyed, like I'll always say this, look, if you enjoy a game, don't let me tell you to stop enjoying it. Enjoy your game, right? Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is a game that's on mixed reviews because this was sold as a $40 game, is still being sold as a $40 game. And I'll be honest with you, for a game like this, I should probably be able to get at least a clean 40 hours of content without getting bored. But man, I got 55 hours in it now, and that's after I revisited it multiple times over and over. I think I got to 23 hours my first run through before I got bored. Look, if a game is going to try to be like a game as a service kind of game like this, where it tries to like keep people playing and, you know, revisiting missions and blah, 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 it's going to be like that. I should at least get $1 per hour out of my value, right? Like I should at least get that much, but I didn't even get that much of this game. And I'll be real with you, I don't think anybody buying the game now could get that much out of it. So mixed reviews seems fair. I don't really think that this game... Man, I don't think this game's going anywhere. Let me put it that way. I'm gonna end it on that note. I'll end it on that note. The sad truth is, after revisiting this game and after seeing their next update coming, I don't think this game's going anywhere. Again, unless they got some big secret update happening, dude. I don't know, man. It's disappointing. It's a disappointing time. Because I had high hopes for this game. I think a lot of people had high hopes for this game. A lot of people were hoping this game was going to be better, and it's just not. It's just never going to be better. Oh well, man. Maybe the next game, right? Yeah. Oh well. Well, see y'all. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye bye.